There's a divergence happening where it's like, if you fully adopt like AI in every way, good luck being happy.
Yeah,
I feel like
too
you're going
much.
to lose connection with people. In the end, what is life about? It's not all about systems and making money.
Base level jobs that are like white collar jobs are going to be the ones completely eliminated, but having someone who understands the business, that doesn't go away with AI. That's going to stay here.
The huge benefit of this AI tool is like more efficiency, less time spent on a particular task.
You'd always see these clickbaity articles that were like 8 reasons why mobile home parks are the easiest to manage. And what's funny is now you see the opposite. 8 reasons why mobile home parks are harder than you thought.
All right, welcome to the CashFlow panel. Happy New Year. It's 2025. First real week of January. Working the cobwebs off of the family mode in the holiday season. So, but we're excited to get back together. Got the pros here again. And we want to chat through a few topics, but the first one to kick us off is we interact with a lot of people, a lot of clients, investors, and or just professionals in the industry, people that maybe own one park or a lot of people that own a lot of rentals. And so we come across the conversation of like, oh, how hard is it to manage mobile home parks? You know, and that's what I would call the active management of a mobile home park versus just investing with a company like us, and we then make the experience completely passive. And so we wanted to kind of break that down, because if you never invested with what we're called as a real estate syndicator and or a sponsor, and for putting the deals together, we essentially earn sweat equity. But for that, we completely do everything. So there's a big difference and there's some nuances. And so we just wanted to kick that around, and then we'll kind of go into how to get involved from different angles. And then we have some fun stuff we'll talk about at the end.
Let's get into it.
What do you think? So, all right. So Eldridge is our COO for Comfort Communities, which is our management arm. It was the first company we started. We used to raise money through it. But Comfort Communities is really now the specifically engaged on the resident and rent collection and operational front of the business, and employs all the people in the field.
The property management company.
It's the property management company.
Yeah.
And so that is a big job, you know? and so
And
a lot of people are
very
like,
active.
I mean, it's just a trailer park. How hard can it be? And
Yeah.
I said that, and I got my butt kicked and made all sorts of backwoods deals with residents for like the first 3 deals. And then we ended up like with huge back balances with residents. And then, okay, well, wait, there's new legal work that has to be done to make sure the leases are in compliance. And, the residents called the city, and the city's knocking on the door, calling you in the middle of the night. The well ran out of water, and we're having to truck potable water in and pump it into our well so that we can, pass it through. There's drama.
Unlimited
So then you
experiences.
then you learn, and what we've now done is we've learned exactly the type of deal that we love to operate. But like, give us a 101 Tide. Like, let's say, a good friend of yours that you knew from school, or maybe even their parents come to you like, hey, I had a capital event. I made a couple bucks and I really want to put it to work, but I saw this ad for a mobile home park. I'm thinking about just buying it. Would you recommend that to them, or how would you give them the breakdown?
Obviously, it depends on the scenario and what the person wants, right? So if the goal is, I've worked my whole life and now I'm 70 years old and I have this capital event and I want to be on cruise control vacation, and now I want to take that capital and buy this mobile home park and check out, that's not going to happen, right? That's where I think a lot of people get kind of turned around, where they think, oh, it'll be easy, maybe a couple hours a week here and there. Everything's going to be, smooth sailing and I can just sit in Bora Bora. It's just not the case. And so that being said, if you have a capital event and your uncle you never met passed away, you got $5 million all of a sudden, and you're 30 and you want to work, you want another job that you're in control of, that's a different conversation. But I think what happens more often is the first scenario. That's what we kind of bump into. And so just from a historical standpoint, I've been with the company for 10 years. And when I first came on, to learn. You guys put me, I got all the tapes for the manufactured housing, university. And I signed up for as many newsletters as I could get. And this was, I think, even before MHI had its publication, its physical magazine publication. But I just started reading as much as I could about the space. And what was common is you'd always see these clickbaity articles that were like 8 reasons why mobile home parks are the easiest to manage. And what's funny is now you see the opposite. 8 reasons why mobile home parks are harder than you thought. Right. And so we run into it all the time. I think from an acquisition standpoint, we often see where we're buying deals from, the grandkids who are in their 60s that inherit it from Papa. They're living in the park and they're collecting rents. Like, if that's what you want, then it's a great deal.
Some of the most interesting people I've ever met, by the way.
Yeah. But a lot of times, we've run into it where it's just oftentimes where it's like, hey, this is a full-time job, then some, and we don't want to do it. So we want to sell to, a nice family operation and take our cash, take the bruises from the exchange, or roll it into something else and move on. And so that is just something to know. And I think it's kind of like, when you're looking at operating a mobile home park, you would think, okay, well, it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to set up this and that, accounts from utilities and stuff like that. But what type of due diligence did you do on this property? Did you have an engineer, a wastewater engineer, go through and scope the entire property, make sure there aren't any monsters hiding that are going to take, some of these situations, we run into, if your source power on your electrical is bad, it's between 17 and 24,000 a pad. If you have a 50 space park, do the math, you're broke. You've already ruined your deal. So
if you don't have a big balance sheet.
Right. And sometimes you run into situations where you have a tenant that has nothing but time and they're not thinking logical and they just decide to, be a pest, or sometimes not even a resident. You'd just be shocked at the amount of different scenarios that happen. It's not all hunky dory. And so I think that that's just something that, you have to be prepared for. That's in any business, right? Like if you manage restaurants, you're going to have to deal with things. It's the same thing here. So I think what happens is there's this weird fantasy that you're just going to take your money, buy a mobile home park, collect the rents every month that magically appear in your bank account, and you don't have to do anything and you can drink your pina colada. And it's just not the case.
All right, break down, just because we're pulling a couple layers of the onion back. Break down like the 1, 2, 3 of what a management company does.
Yeah. So it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So it's a pyramid. The basics, when you first get into it, when we first got into it, and if somebody bought it tomorrow, the very first things you're figuring out is basically the setup and structure of the business, right? Making sure the utility accounts are on. If you aren't physically there yourself, which we've had situations where we didn't have staff, we had to fly out to pick the checks up off the ground, all these different types of things, but basically making sure you have the funnel to receive the rent checks every day, basically, throughout the month. You're probably going to get the vast majority of your checks by the 5th, but then you have stragglers. You have people who are on Social Security that get paid every 3rd week. You have all these different things that you have to kind of start setting up. And so I really think that on the base level, that is the first thing everybody has to figure out. And it's one of the easiest things to figure out, right? That's straightforward. You're going to figure that out first. So setting up that, making sure you have utilities. Well, then you get into the second part of this, right? So as mobile home park operators, our business, and this is commonly messed up. I see this all the time with other even professional operators. They forget what our business is. Our business is lot rent. That's number one. You need to make sure you're collecting your lot rent. That comes before housing. I'll just give an example. Let's say that on average, the industry has 5% turnover per annum with their units.
The lot rental community. That's, yeah.
Correct. So you have a resident, who knows what happened. They passed away, they lost their job, whatever. They end up getting evicted. Okay. They don't work with the property to give you the title. They run out of Dodge. You'd be shocked how many people just all of a sudden you're knocking, you look in the window, there's nothing in the house. Okay.
They've abandoned
the
home.
So you go through the eviction process and then you go through an abandonment process in most of the states we operate in. Now, first off, I'm kind of glazing over this, but that's a whole thing in itself. Who's filing all of the paperwork?
Which is a specific nuance to the mobile home park space, right? No other asset class has that particular nuance.
Which I think it's also worthy of note that because of this, like kind of what's the right word? Like eccentricities of this space, there aren't a lot of third-party management companies that do a good job. Most groups that own manufactured home communities or mobile home parks on scale operate them themselves, which I think is interesting. It's very different from multifamily.
Because I would say multifamily is not like that at all. Majority hire third-party companies.
Pretty easily done.
Yeah.
If someone was to say, hey, what's the first vendor you would call if you're going to start a management company? The answer is an attorney. Okay. And this is not something you skimp out on. Get the best one you can afford, because it's just going to come with so many things, so many scenarios that you use one, and not just for, landlord tenant related items, but all of it. And it's always good to get a professional's opinion from a legal standpoint. But that being said, just quickly to touch on, if you don't hire an attorney and you're now doing all this, you're filing a lot of paperwork. You're making sure it's delivered by the law. Do you know the law? There's a lot of little parts of this. And if you decide to sub it out, there's a cost, right? So on average, an abandonment costs us around $6,000, right? That's start to finish, the full eviction process, the filing, the title registry, everything. It's like $5,500 to $6,000 for all the labor cost for the different legal assistants that process it. So that's in itself an issue. Okay, well, now you have a home.
Now it's like 4 to 6 months goes by and you end up with a home that you got to throw away the refrigerator. and
then
you have
gross
to
food inside.
like clean out a ton of weird stuff potentially. And then you got to remodel it and sell it. And you become a home flipper for a manufactured house.
Okay.
A mobile home.
Well, let's make it even more fun. In most states, you have a limit on how many houses you can own in the entity. And I almost want to put like a quick pause, like, do you own this yourself?
Right.
What's your insurance situation? There's just a lot of things, right?
Yeah, there's layers.
How'd you take title of this piece of real estate? Is it in your trust? Yeah. Oh, and how'd you take title of this home? Oh, it's in your name now. So now you're getting into other regulatory issues where you technically shouldn't be owning this mobile home. And now you're acting as like a dealer.
So do you have a dealer's license?
Right. And
then you have to go and pay to get a dealer's license. Okay.
And
now
take a test.
Well, and each state has different regulations. So then you got to learn that particular to whatever area you're in.
So like mom and pop with a 50 unit could probably get by in the gray on like under 5 homes a year is like, I think the rule. But like then you start to bump into this.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's say you don't need the dealer's license, but you probably do. And you're going to have to go through all of the processes, and then you're getting audited from the Department of Housing for these kind of things, making sure all of your paperwork's right. Did you properly, transfer titles? And we haven't even gotten to the fact that now you have to sell this piece of real estate, right? So like a lot of times we see the people that are bringing us capital, it's because they sold a $2 million house that they have, right? So you sold a $2 million house. Now, instead of investing with a company like us, you've bought a mobile home park. Well, guess what? Now you got to sell a few much cheaper houses and reno them throughout the year.
You just bought yourself a job.
It's a job, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the big differentiating factor is what are we talking about?
And what does that individual want, right? Because like you were saying, if they want to do that and learn how to do it, great, go do that.
Well, and we've actually had a couple. So then where this goes is they get down the road and they go, oh shit.
This is more work than I originally
Blake,
anticipated.
I got your number from so-and-so, and it sounds like you guys operate mobile home parks. What should I do? Will you operate it for us? And I go, no. No disrespect, but we only operate the ones we own. We don't third-party manage because we want to stay focused on the investment side for us too. Mm-hmm. And then we've had a guy call me, and he didn't like the way the park was laid out, so he non-renewed everybody right out the gate.
Yeah. Oh, there goes your revenue source.
So he cut his revenue. Basically, it was impending. It was going to get cut. Now, these guys were pretty hands-on and capable, but they basically realized that they just had bought themselves a heavy job for the next 2 to 3 years.
And for reference too, we also advised him against it, but he called me a year later and I said, what'd you end up doing with it? And he said, yeah, I non-renewed, kicked everyone out of the park. And now he's sitting on, essentially vacant land that he is trying to decide what to do.
Oh man.
And he puts yourself in a tough spot because as like you're getting to in the second hierarchy, which I really like that reference. mobile home parks are so unique because it's like a quasi build for sale / build for rent community.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's got an old zoning precedent. So like, I wonder what's going to happen now that he's scraped this old historic kind of element to the zoning.
Correct.
Now he's got to go to current codes and everything. And he did it before he ever got approvals.
Yeah.
So like, there's a puzzle and a chess game to be played with every deal. And so you have to be cognizant of like A, B, C, D. You don't want to put the cart before the horse and cut revenue early. Like there's a lot. Well, there's just a lot of interesting.
And I think that's a common mistake that sometimes people make is like, you just think, oh, okay, well, I'll just non-renew it. And they didn't think about, well, before I non-renew everybody, I might check codes or I might check
what the city
is going to say.
Are they going to approve a new one?
Right. And so it's just like a common thing that like people just kind of do what they think's best. And you end up getting yourself into more trouble than originally anticipated, which is just kind of a whole nother reason of like, if you're wanting to do this and learn, by all means, it's a really fun adventure and we enjoy it. And we've learned a lot of things over the last 16 years we've been doing this, but
we were kids. We
wanted the job.
We had the energy and needed the job, needed the income.
Totally.
We had a lot of fire on our side to reasons why to push through the challenges. Right. And like, I feel like that's the big question is like, how old are you? How capable are you? And what stage of your life are you in?
Right.
You know, because that's really the question.
And so
anyone can do it.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not you want to take it on.
Totally. And I think that's a good segue into like, if you didn't and wanted to be more passive, you could find a sponsor like us. There's lots of people that do what we do. We're one option, right? But you could choose to take that lump sum of money and invest in a company with us. And so then now you're buying a piece of a mobile home park where we do all the work and all you do is you get a check in the mailbox every month, which we like to call it mailbox, or a direct deposit into your bank account, which makes it even that much easier.
Like clockwork monthly.
Right.
You know, and you don't have to do anything.
We haven't even gotten into like the next part, which would be, okay, you now realize you don't want to be collecting the rents, right? You realize you don't want to be sitting there every day answering the phones going. So now your next step up in the pyramid is staffing, right? So depending on your scale, if you've, bought, and I'll take a brief segue, but what was the amount that you had given me that you had earned? Was it $5 million?
What?
You said that you had a cash event. Now you have some money. How much are we talking?
Oh, yeah, I think it was 5 million.
Okay. So just to look at that, first off, for 5 million, and if you don't have any real estate experience, you don't have anything being vetted, that is what you have to buy. You have to buy a deal cash. You're not going to be able to get debt most likely on the deal.
That's a whole other piece. That's a whole other learning curve.
Right.
Is.
So now you don't have the opportunity to really take advantage of debt and really seeing your wealth appreciate. So you're buying something cash. Now, if we're talking $5 million, that's going to be, what size deal we think we're going to size?
40, 50 unit.
Okay. 40, 50 unit. So your payroll ability and expense ratio on this is really pretty slim for payroll. So now you're probably not getting the best quality community, right? You're buying a 40 or 50 space mobile home park, and now you've got $27,000 to pay. I mean, you're hiring a part-time person for an okay wage.
You're most likely bringing in a resident ambassador. You're hiring somebody that's like a good person in the park to then just keep eyes on the deal.
Is the person living in your 40 space community the kind of person you want handling your money every single day?
Right.
Is that who you want? And we did that for a long time. And we
the answer's no.
Right. And so now where I'd say we're like, if you know anything about pyramids, we're like a Chichen Itza. Okay. We're like the flat top, right? That's where we're living right now. Okay.
I love that you know that word.
I know. What the heck? That's a great word.
Chichen Itza. Come on. The Mayan Riviera. So where we are in this is we're the full pyramid. Okay. So now we get from that, we break through that. And that what that happens is, and you see it a lot of time. I always joke around. It's one manager in a file cabinet. I can tell a lot about an operation if they're one manager in a file cabinet. And sometimes you see really huge companies that are one manager in a file cabinet. But where I think you reach enlightenment, which would be like the Pyramid of Giza, the perfect pyramid, is you start to source and create systems, operational efficiencies. These are the kind of things that over time bring down expense ratios and make things run really seamlessly, right? So one of the first things we realized was we were growing so quickly. We're growing 30 to 40% a year. How do you staff the next park? Because the parks we were buying, we didn't like the way they were managed. We didn't hire the managers. We fired them upon acquisition because these are people that obviously are willing to let something run the way it shouldn't. And then now we have to find somebody, we have to train somebody. So there was this lag time. So what we started having is adding a person in prep, right? And then we started realizing, well, there's some operational efficiencies with 2 people managing 2 or 3 parks. And so from there, we developed our regional teams. And so right now we manage most markets with a staff of between 4 and 5 people that are specialized in what they do. So that might be a supervisor, an office admin, a quality control supervisor, and a leasing agent, right? These people are all collectively working to make sure the parks run the way they should.
For how many deals? Just
usually, I would say it's like 1 person per 100 units is kind of the number we like to see. And so, if you're managing a market of 500, maybe it's 6 or 7 parks, or five standard parks. That's a staff of 5, right? And so you start to get some operational efficiencies, right? Also, from an acquisition side, you have a staff in a regional office of 5. If you're buying a deal around there during due diligence, I've had 5 people there 3 times. They're looking at the units. They're pros. They know what they're doing. These are the kinds of things that come.
Maybe then we get to 600-700 units with the same 5, potentially.
100.
That's where that really builds.
Right.
And your hair's not on fire, and you have somebody to go get either the checks or deal with residents that are not being able to log into the new portal to pay. Like, then you have boots on the ground, where like Tide and I literally flew out to do that several times, where you have a deal with a manager and then the staff that you brought on doesn't show up.
Right.
Well, I think I have so much to touch on as you're going through this. This is why not only just normal people, why they invest through us or another company like us, but this is even why the smartest money in the world, the big private equity companies, aren't building these in-house teams themselves, and instead are just trying to back groups like us to then go deploy capital. Because whether or not you want to go passive or active, you have the same idea. You like the space,
right.
You like affordable housing, you like MHC, you read something about it, and it excited you to that you want to deploy capital. Then you make a decision: do I want to go active? Do I want to do this myself, or do I want to go passive? But the same overarching need or want is that you want access to this space. And whether or not you are a mom and pop, or you just sold a company, or you want to you're maybe a smaller fish in the greater scheme of things, right? Or if you're the largest money manager, Wall Street, investor, most of these folks are they know how to underwrite. They're very good in Excel model. They understand real estate very well. They understand trends, but then they know how complex what Tide is saying, the management piece of this. There's not a third party out there for them to just go hire, like in apartments or any other asset class in real estate. And so that's why it's so challenging, because it's so challenging to operate it. It creates a really unique opportunity for groups like us that you guys were kids. It takes 16 years to build a 16-year track record. You take a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. You build up this management company. You build a lot of efficiencies. You learn along the way. And then you get to this point where you can really underwrite really effectively, knowing expense ratios, going into due diligence, knowing where you need to spend more time, spend more money to make sure that you protect your investment, understanding where you want to buy. All these things come into play, but it takes a long time to do it. You can't just do it overnight. So I think what you're touching on, it's not just like, hey, I'm a 60-year-old or a 30-year-old guy that wants to buy my first park. The same people on Wall Street are wondering, how do we get access to these deals? And then they go through and they spend a lot of money. They have smart people like, damn, well, yeah, we don't want to build out that team that, we got to go get a dealer's license to be effective. How complicated this is.
You have to build a team no matter what. There's no one shot resolves it. You have to have a team that is sharp in the space,
100%.
And that takes time.
Yeah. Or if you're a big group, you buy, you JV or you back a group, right? You see that a lot in our space. I mean, we have institutional partners. We didn't entertain a lot this year, but last year, plenty of them, a couple of calls, and they would love to give us money, and then us, them back us and us go buy deals on their behalf. And I've turned that down for the time being, because we'd rather grow wealth for real people. And we're able to do this ourselves, and we have the expertise. But yeah, it's just,
deploying, it's an interesting point, but like deploying huge capital, hundreds of millions of dollars, which is really what they're after.
Yeah.
The institutions they have so much money, their liquidity isn't their challenge. They need access, but they want to access and deploy so much money that the deal flow becomes an issue. And you start making mistakes on buying turds, buying deals that are not going to perform. There's no better way to say it.
Yeah. And I mean, we haven't even touched on taxes. We haven't touched on accounting. Insurance.
I know the accounting piece, man. Then you go into paying the bills, and now like, okay, one deal is easy enough, but like, we've also glossed over the fact that like you and I used to get called in the middle of the night, like weird stuff, like, oh, so-and-so's beating on the next door neighbor's front door. Nobody knows why. And the cops show up and we're getting called at 3 a.m. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it freaks you out if you don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah. We've had SWAT raids in the communities for God knows what reason, whether it was drugs or whatever. So it's just like you get yourself into, one of the best deals we did was a North Las Vegas deal, which is an area that has a decent amount of crime. And the guy was basically just like stressed to the absolute limit with this deal. He inherited it. And it was a great deal. We just happened to hit him at the right time and we made a good deal knowing what we know. But it was like, I felt bad for the guy because his hair was on fire. Like literally.
He couldn't get rid of it fast enough.
He was a mess.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, he was an engineer by trade.
Yeah.
So like this is a guy and he lived in a different state, right? So engineer by trade, you're in your 50s, dad passes away. Now you have a charity asset worth millions.
Yeah.
And your first thought is, I want the cash flow. I'm going to manage it remote. Well,
he ended up having to be there a lot.
Jump out of a plane with a parachute, but you've never done it before, right? How does that feel? What is the experience you go through versus we jump out every day? So I think that's the big difference,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's good pyramid. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, great pyramid.
All right. So Jen, you want access, right? Isn't that the transition?
Yeah. So like access to real estate or alternative investments,
Let's say you really like residential because of the reasons you've heard. Mm-hmm. You can buy rentals, you can buy fourplexes, you can buy apartments, depending on the amount of money you have, right?
$5 million.
Okay, $5 million.
And so with $5 million, you're kind of like, well, here in San Diego, you could buy 5 houses, maybe 6 or 8 with $5 million and collect the rents and do that, pay cash for them. Like there's a lot of our clientele actually that's done that and then realizes that even managing rentals is pretty capital intensive. One of the things that comes to mind just while I'm on this run is most people don't believe and or aren't disciplined enough, don't lead themselves and control their reserves well enough to know that like if you have a decent amount of holdings, one $50,000 screw up or issue with a property, if you don't have reserves, that can light you on fire, and now you maybe have to go borrow money. Hopefully you don't already have a bunch of leverage on them. But like I have a friend of mine that's not far away from me and he's been calling me and he's going through it right now because his tenant got evicted and it was a great tenant in an industrial building and he didn't have reserves and he's going to have to make huge TIs, multi-million-dollar, tenant improvements to an industrial space in order to get it released. And he doesn't have any money.
Oh, that's a tough spot to be in.
And so that's like the thing that hits me. Then we've talked to a lot of groups that have like homes on scale, like 50, 100 rental homes that are the families crushed it, right? They have a really cool legacy now, but like, where do we go from here? Homes are really inefficient to manage long-term because they all start falling apart.
Yeah.
Okay. Jump in. I've been talking a lot.
No, I agree. I mean, I think there's a couple little jump off points there, but even, So I think even too, just like thinking about if someone, I'm just going to throw one other like category in there too, which I hear a lot when I talk to investors. I have a lot of investors that have money in 401ks or they have money in the stock markets and they don't believe in the stock market. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, right? I'm just saying like that is their belief, right? And so they're looking for alternatives, and I say that like an alternative, but alternatives as well to invest in places where they they could see it, they could feel it, they could touch it, they understand it, right? Like a lot of people that we speak with, they just don't love the stock market. They just don't believe in it. They think it maybe is manipulated or it's just too risky for them, right? And
to your point, they don't always know what you're investing in. Like, especially if you're with, just a normal employer who you pick a 401k and you get to pick a certain bucket of like high risk, a middle of the road risk or low risk, then they invest in those various buckets with that particular risk level, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you sort of know what you're investing in, but not really. And you're hoping for the best. And so you're kind of relying on somebody else and like lots of levels of people who are all earning fees along the way to then finally get your return. And so it's maybe not as efficient. Now, I'm not saying don't diversify some of your portfolio there, right? But like maybe you don't want 100% of your invested cash or allocation in those buckets. Right?
Exactly. Especially as you get older and you get more, you've kind of seen that growth and you want to pull money out of the stock market and then live more on cash flow. But like you brought it up earlier in the talk, it's like, I don't think a lot of people understand that you could take control of your 401k or your Roth, your IRAs, and put those into self-directed IRAs and invest them into properties like ours, right?
Totally.
You could do it into like private credit or private lending, like first deed trust things where you could go see the property that you're loaning on. You can know, you have collateral, you're collecting a good coupon, or you can invest with us where you're very close to the operators. You call me directly. You can come into our office. You understand it. You could talk to hundreds of people that have been with us for 10 years. So you could feel really comfortable and then build that community. And so that's like a good point for people. If anyone's listening, it's like you could take control of your own finances, whether or not it's not like, oh, they're off in the abyss. They're in this 401k through Fidelity and I work 30 years and I don't understand, I don't understand what I own. Like you can like call them up, say like, hey, how much do I have? You could sell those assets, not incur any taxes because it's in a 401k,
right?
Roll it into a self-directed IRA and then invest those proceeds into one of our deals or into another deal, into another alternative. So there's so many options nowadays. I think it's just difficult for folks to understand what their options are and what's available.
Yeah. And they're not really like, people don't sell that option, right? Like when you get your information about your 401k, like they're not telling you, hey, and you should also know that you could always roll this into a self-directed, 401k or IRA and have that as an option. I don't feel like it's advertised very much, or like people aren't educated on that particular piece.
Well, of course, because it's it's an alignment of interest too,
Totally.
Because you don't, Fidelity or whoever else. And I'm not, this is just if you wanted to do this, right? They're not going to want to lose assets under management. They don't want to lose fees for you to then roll that money out of their sphere, right? So
100%.
So they're incentivized for you to keep it there. And a lot of just Wall Street is just built up on this 401k system. And I think it's good. I mean, I don't think it's bad.
Better than not saving any money.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yes.
Or just saving it in a bank account.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
Yeah, at least it got a good run on, and even on an S&P spread,
Yeah.
depending on risk.
yeah.
Which
And-
that's a good, a good place to be.
And if you have an employer's match, like always max out that, right? Like there's like little, tricks and so forth. And so I talk to a lot of clients and I'm always trying to be as, unbiased as possible and say, hey, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CPA, but, they kind of lean on me at times for my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a lot of folks out there that like the idea of investing in real estate. And we get those calls all the time. And so I just give them the tools and the knowledge on if they wanted to do it, how to do it, but not guide them in, as far as professional, investment advice. It's just like, hey, like these resources are out here, connect with, here are some one pagers, here's some good people to talk to. You go do your own research.
When I feel like a point of awareness is, especially if you've been working for 30 years and you have a decent chunk of money sitting in somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at like an impending draw, like you're going to have to make a required draw per year.
Which happens a lot with
once you get
people.
there, is it 65?
65, 62 and a half. Yeah. You have like AMD, like average minimum distributions that you need to pull out every year.
So what I love about at that moment in somebody's life where they've had a good run. Now they're maybe retired from that job where they're not paying in anymore. and they have a lump sum. It's grown. It's done really well in the markets. And then you're looking at like, how much do I need to draw per month? But then it's kind of spooky because now the market's got to continue to perform and you're drawing principal.
Exactly.
Whereas I think a lot of our clients that have done this successfully and moved money from these retirement plans into our deals is they're looking at the whole picture on retirement and going, all right, I want I'm just going to throw another 5 out there, $5,000 a month coming from this account. Well, if you plan accordingly and you have enough money, you can leg enough money into the deals to where our cash flow from the property and the ownership in your 401k or IRA is going back into that bucket. And then you're drawing that out every month and it's just replenishing and you're not burning principal. Meanwhile, you're growing an asset tax-free on the appreciation side. I think it's a slick maneuver, especially if you have the funds.
I agree. That's what I was just having a conversation with a client the other day, and and he just realized he could do this, and he's been an investor with us for a long time, and he's reaching a retirement. He has his minimum distributions. I was like, well, this would be a good way for you to use the cash flow for that minimum distribution. That way you're not burning principal, right? And you can keep that, your net worth, keep that nest egg in there and keep your money making money for you and living off that cash flow. And if you don't need more than the minimum distribution, right, then you could just roll it into a real estate deal, maybe private credit deals, whatever they are, and just have that income feeding that minimum distribution, all while you're keeping your principal balance the same, if not growing it, right? With us, you'd be
100%.
growing it. But if you're in private credit, obviously it's going to stay the same. You live off that dividend. But yeah, it's a great way, great creative way for folks. And there's a lot of folks out there that, that's kind of a stress for them. And, they've worked really hard. They've made their money, but they don't want to now pull down this money every year because they know that they're going to deplete those accounts. And so they'd rather just live on the dividend or the income that principal balance generates.
Yeah.
And just to add something, because you were talking about, if you make the decision to move this, you're selling this asset. For those people who are very passive, there's actually some companies that help do this. So it's pretty slick, right? Like it's not a ton of work. It's not like you have to go down, into the rabbit hole and figure out how to maneuver out of Fidelity or whatever account you're in. There are companies that will help you do it, hold your hand through it.
Some people go, oh, that's probably really expensive to move it. It's really not. It's a nominal fee that, depending on the company is different.
Yeah, it's free to move it. I've done it. So it's free to move it, and then you pay a fee just like you're paying a fee when I was at Fidelity.
Okay. Is the fee reasonable?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it less, more?
It depends. Yeah, if you invest more, then it's way less. Like it depends. They're all different. And that's what's great about competition. There's so many 401k self-directed IRA providers out there today that it creates a lot of competition and fee compression. So yeah, the fees are, I'm very fee sensitive. Like I understand fees very well. And so I looked through them pretty deeply and I was like, no, they make sense to me. And yeah, I would say they're cheaper. Yeah.
One of the points before we were kind of sitting here and talking through this all, we talked about a big thing to be cognizant of is you want to, if you can, get closer to the actual companies that you're invested in, to remove the kind of game of telephone or the amount of people in the loop to get your stock traded. It's like less people in the chain to take fees, the better.
Right.
And so that's where I think in the end, once people start investing with us, you realize we had a couple of guys this week just show up and hang out with us for 10, 15 minutes and say, hi, how's things going? And it's literally we're doing it out of the office. And those are the properties. Another couple of clients that were in the area just wanted to go see some of the improvements we've done to some properties. We scheduled meetings with the team and the investors went out and met the team at the properties that they've invested in. And it was no big deal. And it's kind of fun for our team to be able to interact that way. But it's we're the ones doing it and you're interacting with us. Yep. And that's where you're going to declutter and get rid of the friction and the fees when you know and you go direct.
Yeah. It's like when you call a bank and you get just that robot and you're on there forever and you're getting, thrown around. I'd way rather just talk to who's managing my money, who's the decision maker. I know who they are. I know their family. I know they're good people. I know what the property is. I know where it's located. I know other investors that are with them. I've kind of done my own due diligence and checked with them. Hey, how's been your experience with them? Is everything that they're saying, is it legit? You get your cash flow every month, right? So absolutely. I think that is the best position to be in, is if you're close to operators. And it's unique for us that we offer that, and we're just kind of nimble and have built a really cool investor base to allow for that. But yeah, like a lot of folks, it's like they don't even know. I just had another client that did an UPREIT, sold some property, and then did an UPREIT into some very, credible, I think it was like Carlyle or Ares, big private equity firms. And I was like, what do you own? And she's like, I'm not sure. I'm like, okay. And then we went golfing. 3 months later, she's like, okay, I figured it out. It's a student housing, apartment in North Carolina or something. Like, oh, that sounds pretty good, But like, I'm like,
it's in a good market.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like,
it's nice.
Exactly. Right. And it was like, no, my advisor kind of told me to do it, and you trust your advisor and so forth. But I'm just saying, it's like different strokes for different folks. And I just would rather like know exactly what I'm getting into, be able to do my due diligence on the front end. And then when I have a question, like we talk about this a lot, I like to reduce friction from my life, and being able to call somebody and like, hey, I need this. And it's like there right away, exactly who to call. It's a real person, a text message. Like to me, that's like ultimate. We talk about it like we want to provide white glove service. And we really try to stand behind that. And it's like, getting back to a client right away, making sure we're getting them the information they need. If they have a question, if they want to come into our office and meet with us, if we could open up our kimono and provide them with our CPAs or our attorneys or anything like that. If they have questions, or maybe it's not even related to us, but we could just lean in and help them. Like that's what we try to do.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot of fun.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. And there's nothing worse than trying to figure out an answer and you're going to the website looking at it like, okay, how do I get in touch with somebody? That is the worst.
I feel like most of the people in that scenario, or even right now, are like, well, maybe I want to get into real estate, but I don't know about all the stuff that's going on over here. So then they talk with their advisor, and what do they tell them? We'll put it in a REIT,
Yeah, and it's whatever. And that's another good, and like hopefully people know this, but like say you brokerage with like Morgan Stanley, and I don't want to pick on Morgan Stanley, it's a great firm. And you say, hey, I really like mobile home parks, or that they probably don't have anything to offer you, but let's just say like apartments or something like that. They could only sell you what's on their kind of like their menu, right? So you're getting kind of a very limited offering of like what they could provide. And they do their due diligence and backgrounds and all that, but you're really getting kind of the vanilla stuff. And I think like what's really cool is that if you have the connections, or you like, or have the know-how to then find and do your own due diligence on very specialized operators, and then you could decide, okay, what is it that I want? I want apartments, but I've been reading and I don't really want apartments in California. I want apartments in the Southwest. Okay, who's the best operator that all they do, they started in Dallas or they started in, Phoenix, and they're the number one best, they have the best track record. Like, what's that group? And then you can go contact that group and then invest through them, and you can do due diligence. Or like, if you want to go to mobile home parks, it's like with us, like, that's how I think about investing personally, is like, and I think I've said this before in a podcast, like betting on people. Like I'd rather just like come up with my own kind of thesis, if you will, or my own kind of investment strategy, and then just try to go back the best horses that all they do is that thing. Right. And then if I want something else, I'll just go find the best in that specific strategy. Yeah. It's easier said than done. Right.
I know it's interesting as you're bringing that up. It's like, man, starting from scratch, how would you even find those sponsors? It's pretty obscure.
It's challenging.
It is challenging.
Like you'd have to get in. You'd start maybe go to some events that were relevant to that space and learn who's who, because that's the key.
Well, that's kind of high net worth family offices, high net worth folks. Like that's their business, is just finding good operators, right? Finding unique, great operators, and then providing them money and then growing. But like if you're just like the normal person, it is very challenging. I mean, it's challenging for anyone.
You're looking at vanilla REITs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, their dividend, we actually got a funny client story. Was somebody I'd been working on for a lot of years, just to like show him what we do and be able to kind of get his ear for a few minutes. He finally called me back because his advisor with whatever big shop he's with showed him a Blackstone mobile home park REIT. Or what do you call it? Like up REIT or
Yeah, no, it's a REIT.
okay.
Yeah.
And they were actively, and I knew at the time they were actively buying a bunch of stuff, and the dividend was 3%.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, unless does the stock price go up? Like
Stock prices go up. Yeah. I mean, on a publicly traded REIT, like if you're like, hey, I want real estate, like I would advise anyone don't do a REIT because it's different.
right.
It's a stock, right?
So you may get a dividend, but then the stock is volatile.
Yes, exactly.
Could go down.
Exactly. And
Well,
you're not going to get
taxable too.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you're
It's
not getting the
taxable.
appreciation of the asset.
No.
Well, you do in the stock appreciation,
Yeah,
right?
the price of the stock goes up.
Exactly.
Correct.
But then it's fickle because like
yeah.
you'd think sometimes, like I looked at Sun and ELS are the two big REITs in our space. It's really hard to understand why the price does what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like you think
Yeah,
like
there's
we
no
know
rhyme or
that
reason.
rents in our space have increased in the last 5 years pretty substantially.
And steadily.
And you can't really tell
yeah.
that the stock price moved.
Well, you could do
Yeah.
so if you look at like 2020, like those REITs, real estate REITs in general, right? Or even like right now, but let's just say 2020 because that's kind of an easy time frame for everyone to reference. Like as soon as COVID happened, all of those big REITs, they just crashed, right? They all crashed because they were like, okay, COVID's happening, people aren't going to pay rent, the world's coming to an end. So all those, so your stock price, your valuation just plummeted, right? So if you're a savvy investor, stock trader, not really, maybe a stock trader / real estate guy, you'd say, no, like the book value, meaning if I were to, liquidate all my stocks, my market cap on my stocks, and the book value of that real estate is more valuable than the actual market cap of the stock price, right? So you say, okay, I'm going to go and start buying that stock at a discount because I know the book value of that is much more valuable. And then you saw it, as real estate just crushed in 2020, 2021, 2022, right? Because of the low rate environment and so then it just completely skyrocketed up. So you ride those big waves, and it's like in the private space, it's not like nothing happened, right? Because you're not selling, and you say, oh no, I'm just going to hold it. And even if you did sell, during that time, you probably would have got a great price. But that's like the difference is like, if you go into a REIT, you're going to wear the volatility. You're not going to get the same tax treatment because it's a stock, right? So you're not going to get that depreciation. And you're really you're really, in my opinion, not accessing real estate in the correct way. Where you should do it like physically, like, you should do it with like actually true ownership, on the private side. But you can, if you're a stock trader, like on Wall Street, you can then play that book value versus market value arbitrage, that discrepancy there. And if you're an active trader, but that's a totally different strategy.
It's
and
not
like
who we're talking to.
exactly,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah, they're trying to get away from that volatility.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
They
And
don't
so
even know about that volatility.
Right.
Yeah.
They just got $5 million.
Yeah.
Right.
They were a baker, dude.
Yeah.
What do I do with this?
But those are the key differences between the private and the public side. It's just, the underlying asset is the same, but it's not from the investor experience. They're completely different.
Totally different. Yeah.
Just don't buy a job if you don't want one.
Yeah.
Don't buy a $5 million job.
What
Yeah.
else was on our list?
Well,
Yeah.
what I was thinking is we could shift into innovation of the space and kind of like fun 2025 innovation that we see coming on the horizon. AI is a hot topic, and I've had several people talk to us about like, how are you going to implement AI? And
Because people say, well, if you're not going to implement AI, then you're really behind the curve. Like you have to, or you won't be keeping up is what you see all these things about that.
I got some stuff on this.
Yeah.
So from an AI standpoint, obviously you have to look at it. Now, I will say this is just my opinion. I'm not saying that AI is not going to be something, but we're in this interesting age where we're constantly getting pitched on new products, new innovations. And what I've experienced with them is they usually are not as profound as they are sold as. And the
100%.
onboarding is usually a lot tougher than what they say, because we've gone through, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 onboardings at this point in time.
And none of them have gone as
What are you
easily.
seeing on the operation side that AI is coming in? Like, where do you see the efficiencies, or at least what are these companies trying to do with AI on the operation side?
well, his point is that he's making, and then I think he's going to go into that, is that the pitch on every kind of company, tech company, software, whatever, is that it's going to make your life amazingly more simple. You know, it's going to like come in, it's going to be the golden magic bullet, and it's going to solve all your problems. And
That's the pitch every time.
we have become weathered and tough to the fact that that never is the case. A system, I got a good quote, a system is what it does. Where versus like what they say it'll do. Like we had another investor platform we looked at really heavy, put a couple bucks down, and then they couldn't do what they said they were going to do. So we pulled it because it was like, well, hey, we're not going to do this if it doesn't solve the problem. And so we've just become a little bit tough to it. Maybe we're going to hold a little bit on some of the early implementation, but go ahead. I think there is some good talking points on
100%. And all I'm getting at is like the onboarding, and sometimes the products aren't really fully doing what they're saying. And right now it's kind of like the internet boom. You know, everyone's buying these websites and making $1 million overnight. I really think we're seeing that. Does that mean the internet was bad and not an advancement? No, obviously there was some stuff that had a ton of merit, but some of those products, some of those websites were garbage. So I think that it's just important to understand that, because everyone's like, oh, AI, and they don't even know about AI, right? So I think what we're seeing in our industry right off the top is from it. Like, I'll give an example. In our utility billing service, we pay extra for a certain type of technology that basically is constantly reviewing all of the utility providers' websites, making sure that the bills get paid as soon as possible. Okay. And so that's something that you don't really think about, but before, you know, these are where the disruptions in services happen. This is where, from an accounting standpoint, if every month it becomes live on the 6th, we know immediately it's gotten paid already, automated, and we don't have to pay an accountant to do that, right? So that's an efficiency that has cut costs. So I think that's a really cool thing that we're seeing. We're seeing where now all of our meetings now have artificial intelligence. Like we're using Fireflies in our meetings. They're dictated, they're automated, they send you summaries. So you don't have to have someone diligently taking notes the whole time who's missing out on the message. You also can look back. I love it because, I get an email at the beginning of the week. It's like, here's every meeting you had last week and here's what they were in one paragraph. So going into meetings, sometimes I'm reading my recaps, what happened last week. And so I'm getting a much more concise kind of picture. And so I think that that's like a really simple automation that we're seeing. And ultimately, the next thing that I think is going to really be a big deal. And, if you're an analyst for a company, I would probably start looking for another job. If all you're doing is basic data entry kind of stuff, because we're already seeing some really cool tools that analyze data and can basically give us all kinds of information about our own financials that, we can spend hours and weeks looking at, but, you upload a P&L in Excel format and ask 5 questions and it's like, here's your oddity, here's this, here's that. And so I think that these are some of the tools that we'll probably see in our industry. That being said, going back into our original conversation, you need somebody who's pulling triggers, right? I think the base level, the base level jobs that are like white collar jobs are going to be the ones completely eliminated, but having someone who understands the business and capable of hiring general contractors to renovate units, interacting with engineers to do large capital improvement projects, that doesn't go away with AI. That's going to stay here. Yeah. But somebody telling you what the expense ratio is when it is it a 30 or a 35? That I think is going to be eliminated by AI. That's my kind of thoughts on it.
And like how we're even using, I'll let Blake jump in here too. Like on the acquisition side, we use a lot of AI on the Comfort Capital side as well. And it's more just like a tool, right? It's not like replacing anything.
But I think there's a ton of leverage that comes from people that are already in positions now have really cool tools.
Correct.
That like, it doesn't like, it's not like wipe out half the company. But I do think there's going to be a scaled benefit as we grow. I don't think we're going to have as many admins.
Correct.
As we once maybe would have had to before AI.
Right.
It increases speed for sure.
100%.
Like on my side, and then how, just like some real examples for some folks, like how we're using it is like if we're going and underwriting a deal and, we're going through all of our due diligence, we'll we're actually modeling out everything. We're reading everything. We're actually, hiring the engineers and doing all that. But then all those reports and everything like that, those are getting uploaded into AI models. That way, when we're kind of working quickly, like, okay, I'm going through my questions and stuff like that, you can kind of pull and reference, where is this at in these docs or wherever it is, and it could quickly put you there. And then you can kind of extrapolate that. You could upload models and be like, here's my model. Like, like, what do you see? Any, like, is there anything that you would question in this or anything like that? And it can kind of spit, and it's more fun, right? It's not like, but it's a way, it's a tool, it's a way to be more efficient, and it increases speed.
Highlight the weird stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's like, oh, here's this anomaly. Legal docs, same thing. I use them in legal docs.
That's one of my favorites, because it could, when you flip through page after page after page to find one specific piece of information, where you can just upload it and search it, like you were saying, where it finds it in seconds. Like, it's a tool that you really are kind of behind the 8 ball if you don't use, like, for efficiency.
And you got to know how to use it too, right? Like, I think, one of the things like with writing, right? So I do a lot of writing, but where I found is the most helpful is that if I write it first, right? And I could write fast because I'm not worried about grammar errors or anything like that, but I'm writing how I write, and like, what's the idea, the thought process that I want to get in. And then I train the model to that, like, this is how I write. Yeah. And then I can upload it. Boom. It spits me out something. Okay. That's okay. I'll grab that. I like that sentence right there. I like how they put those two together. And then I'll go do another version. And then I'm like, okay, just keep everything the same. Just clean up any grammar errors. Boom. And then all of a sudden something that would have taken me, let's just say an hour, right? Of like writing out something like, something very thoughtful and maybe catching. And then it could take me 15 minutes, can take me 20 minutes.
Which that's like the huge benefit of this AI tool, is like more efficiency, less time spent on a particular task, which is huge.
The draft of a letter or an email or whatever about a certain topic.
I use that all the time.
That is a game changer, because that's it's more of a technical layout time frame that it takes you to do. Totally. Versus the actual meat and potatoes of what it says. Yes. It just puts something down and you can edit it, make it you. Totally. And send it.
Yeah. But the people that don't know how to use it will say, hey, write me this letter for this. And then it's like this, like, who the hell talks like that? Right. You write and everyone knows we're getting better on picking up. Like, I could read something like, dude, that's like straight out of ChatGPT, and I won't even read it. Because it's like it has a less
personalized.
And it doesn't connect, right? And you're like, I'm not going to just read that. But you could tell the difference between, oh no, that's actually somebody's voice. That's Blake or Jen. That's that's how they think about this particular topic. Yeah. And so that's where you really got to understand how to utilize the tool, because it's like it's evolving so rapidly. Yeah. And one thing I love about real estate, and just like kind of a funny story, like why one of the kind of the reasons why I wanted to get into real estate, because I started on a trading desk, was because I didn't want to code. I didn't, and I saw that everyone was doing Python and SQL. They're just these languages, and I didn't like coding. Like, I didn't like having to code. And I was like, okay, if I want to continue to grow my career, like, trading is going to be all algorithmic, right? It's going to be all run by computers, and I'm not, and I don't have that skill set. And so I thought about, like, what is the one industry that technology and AI, this is like, 10 years ago, is like going to be the hardest to penetrate, right? Where is it going to be like, hey, this is like, it takes more just like the human effort, and it's like what but it's like how you are able to negotiate and think about the world and then anticipate, right? And it was real estate. And that's why, like, we're talking about AI tools to help us in the corporate office be more functional, but it's not like AI is going to go and start being able to pick out the best mobile home parks and negotiate the price with the seller and like find these crazy deals and like, so that's where, it's going to be more the folks that, it's like the stock traders, it's the hedge funds, and they're utilizing these models. But yeah, in real estate, it's a people business, and you really gotta you really need to, roll up your sleeves and have the expertise like you guys all have over so many years of doing it, to know better, to what's a good deal, what do I want to own. A problem comes up, AI is not going to, help the problem. If, the SWAT team comes up, it's not going to be some AI model calling the SWAT team or whatever it is in that random example you brought up. But that's what I think is pretty cool about it.
AI took my order at Carl's Jr. a couple months ago, so who knows?
I haven't run into that.
Oh yeah. Wow. Bumped into it. Popeyes.
Oh geez. Yeah. Okay.
There's a brand new one in Santee.
I'm thrown off that Blake just threw up Popeyes.
Yeah. I was like,
last restaurant that I'm gonna
I was
say.
like, when the hell did you go to a Popeyes? I actually love Popeyes.
I love
So
Popeyes too.
the only reason I hit a Popeyes lately was there was no line. And I feel like it always has a line.
Gotta go.
And so I'm like, ooh, chicken sandwich sounds pretty good. And then it was like, hello, can I take your order? You know, and it's like, and it regurgitates it. It actually does pretty good, but you have to speak really loud and clear at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to get interesting. I do think though that I saw a couple like good videos about it where there's a divergence happening where it's like, if you fully adopt, in my opinion, like AI in every way,
Almost.
good luck being happy.
Yeah.
I feel like
too
you're going
much.
to lose connection with people. And in the end, like, what is life about? It's not all about systems and making money. Like I watch some of the Star Wars movies or the new shows that are kind of coming out. And I like it because it just kind of moves me into like where technology could go. It just kind of paints a different picture. And there's all these like droids running around and it's like AI. It's in a way, it's like if you were to replace actual human functions, which is like what Elon wants to do with the robots in the house, doing laundry and all that. I just feel like that's going to get weird, you know, and it feels cold even on screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see like the Star Wars stuff and it feels cold.
Something that I think about a lot is all of these, there's all these, like, if you want to earn passive income, right? And you're a young guy, you don't know what you're doing and you start looking on YouTube. One of the first things you're going to see is like these drop shipping or like website advertising and all this stuff, right? So you're like, okay, well now I need to make all these cheap websites, drive paid advertising there. And then what do? They start writing the articles on whatever topic it is, usually something they're not even passionate about, right? They're really just trying to make this like, you know, $1, $5 a day off of 20 websites, you know? And so they have all these very bland AI written articles. And then when you search it, that's what's coming up, right? Because they're running generated paid ads. Well, what do these AI modeling tools do? They scour the internet and take that data. And so what's really interesting is I feel like we're getting this mass scale amount of it talking to itself.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's really hard to have, like, if you're looking up something, it's really hard to get an authentic opinion on something because it's really just 100 people that have made these AI model conversations about stuff. And that's really, you know, frustrating. And, you know, on your point about Star Wars, I watched an interview with George Lucas, and all of George Lucas's storylines are based off of what he felt would connect with people the most, and that's family. So Star Wars, his entire thing, and you realize it when you're going through it, right? Like Luke and Leia and all of the different people in that. And, you know, another storyline that he wrote is Indiana Jones, right? So I don't know if you guys knew that, but George Lucas wrote Indiana Jones. Spielberg obviously produced them and directed them. But when you're watching those, it's family, right? It's like, you know, it's got his father is there, you know, and they're, you know, fighting Nazis together and he's got his whole, you know, origin story. And ultimately, that's a great parallel, right? It's Star Wars versus Indiana Jones. At the end of the day, it's all about family, connection. And so, yeah, I think it's going to get weird, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be that tangible connection that we have as humans with our friends and our people.
Yeah.
And the importance of just authenticity. You know, I think that's just going to continue to be more sought after, is looking for authentic people that, you know, speak their mind, and it's not necessarily always correct, but it's their opinion and it's authentic. And, you know, and I think that's going to be what is really going to be more valuable going forward as AI, like you're saying, continues to grow and getting more cold. I think the warm side is like just people, family, authenticity, and just kind of the imperfections of being a human, right?
Yeah.
Which people want, you know, you got to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Well, hey, I think that pretty much covers it for the day.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. Good content, good fun conversation. So
a good way to kick off the new year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. We wish you the best. And thanks for tuning in. See you next time.